Hello and welcome to this course in Global English once again, Unit 29. We are in writing module unit number 8. We have been talking about how to write so that we write correctly, we write easily, we write to convince and inform people, we write to entertain them, and in other words, how we can write effectively. In many places, in many professions, and while managing different aspects of their work, they also have to write reports, notes, memos, overviews, proposals, reviews, evaluation, an entire set of things concerning numerical data from their work, data in numbers from their workplace. We are going to talk about some of these things, how we can do such a report writing, some small reports, observations on tables, charts, etc., etc. Let's go to the next slide. Look at the table here. Okay. You will see that this table presents some statistical information, about the growth of unified payments interface transactions in India, UPI transactions or UPI enabled transactions in India. For those of you who do not know, this is an interface created by, in the joint work of banks, some software service providing companies, Reserve Bank of India, government, in other words. So, the governments, banks and some software companies came together to create this system and it became usable. Now, sometimes suppose a manager has to convince his bosses that all salary payments can also be done this way, and why not? Then the manager may have to write a report, a note. It may not be right to say a report, but a note, in about 100-150 words, saying how it has grown, what it does, etc., etc. Now, there you really do not have to replicate the information you see here. You do not have to say that in the year 2023, in the month of May, this union had 447 banks, it made so many transactions, it paid or received so much money. It is there. But what you do is, you look at it, you look at the table, and then you make a general report, a general note showing what it shows overall and what it shows but does not say, the trends. Say for example, it shows that in April 2016 and in May 2016, between these 2 months, there was no growth. Okay? But a year later, there was a small growth. There was some growth, no matter how small. So, it was picking up. Okay? So, this is how the report says that, but does not show that. It is hidden that there was no growth in the 2 months of 2016 in April and May, but in the next 12 months there was growth. It was picking up, it was getting attention. Okay. So a manager has to write reports based on numbers, notes and observations based on numbers, or a manager has to read them. Both. The manager is a producer of these reports and the manager is also a consumer of these reports. It is for these managers that these reports are written, and these reports may come in a variety of ways. You can look up the net and see that reports sometimes come as these tables, or they can come as bar charts, as histograms, as pie charts, as graphs, and maybe there are other forms and other ways in which these numbers can be presented for better viewing. But no matter what form these numbers are presented in, when a manager writes a report, and you are a manager, and when you write a report, what is it you would focus on? What is it you should focus on? How you can say things, or only those things that are relevant, not those things which are either redundant or irritating repetition of things that are already otherwise visible. That is where the role of the manager lies. A manager says all that has been said plus all also that has not been said. A manager sees, looks at, observes, makes a note of those things that have been shown but not said, and those things that have been said but not shown. It is not shown, it is shown that there is no growth, but it is not said. It does not say nil, it gives 0, 0. Okay. It does not say between 2016 and 2023 it has grown several times, 100 times or 500 times or so. That is what the report writer does. In other words, the report writer looks at what is visible plus goes beyond what is visible to see the trends that underlie in these parameters, certain numbers, certain period of time at certain place. What are the three things here? One is India, the other is period of time between 2016 and 2023, and then there are parameters. What are those parameters? Different months in the year, number of banks that joined this union, if they were growing, if these numbers were growing, and then the number of transactions and the amount of money that was transacted, that went from one account to another. And these are the things we see. There are things we do not see, but they have been said. Okay? How have they been said? Say, for example, when you compare the numbers, okay, you can see that between 16 and 17 the growth is small, but between 22 and 23 or between 20 and 23 the growth is much larger. People can say even phenomenal growth, significantly higher growth. And not only that, you can make vertical comparisons. The percentage of growth in column 2 from 21 banks to 49 banks, okay, is about just twice as much, almost a little more maybe. But the growth in terms in horizontal bar in May 17 the transaction was under 10 million, only under 10 million transactions had been made, but in under a year it grew 20 times. So much more than the union. Those unions were now, those banks were now doing many more transactions in this manner. Okay, it is about 200 times. And then if you take further, the last column on the right, then the growth is still larger. You see, in the third year, under 3,000 crore rupees had been transferred in this manner, digital manner. But in the fourth year, the volume rose sharply. Per bank it could be much more. It came to well over 33,000 crores. More than 100-fold. So these are the things which are visible but not said, and that is to which a report writer, in other words a manager, draws the attention of his or her intended readers. And this information, as I said, may come in a variety of ways. You can check the internet for things like pie chart, graphs, histograms, bar diagrams, then plain graphs, and maybe others, etc., etc. But no matter what form you get this information in, the report writer always has more than one parameter, more than one variable to look at it. That may be as is the case here, time variable, members in this union, together these unions, number of transactions that were happening across these banks, and the amount of money that involved. It could be anything else. Say, for example, let's look at the Indian Railways, one of the largest railway networks in the world. Suppose you take a look at the loss of revenue during pandemic and how it has picked up once again. Then you may have time, you may have the number of trains that had been cancelled, then the income from tickets and cargo sale in the earlier year, in the following year, the debts, how much rent and salaries and other fixed expenses, and how they are being recovered, etc., etc. So there will always be more than one parameter. There will always be things that will be shown, just as there will always be things that will not be shown but will still be visible. Okay? Or they may not be there, they may be invisible, but then the report says that all. So a good writer therefore would of course take all that has been shown into account. You will make a good mental note of all that has been shown, and while looking at these things, that writer will also look at those things that are said but not shown. Okay. So that is why we will have about 3 or 4 reports of this kind to write. Let us come to the task on hand. Here, as the rubric says, look at the following table carefully and in about 150 words. Should not be less, should not be many more. Write a note on the facts and trends shown here. You can describe all that you see and also all that are indicated by numbers in these tables. As I have said, say for example, look at the year 2022 and 2023. whereas the number of transactions doubled in between these 2 years. There were 6,000 transactions in 6,000 million transactions in May 22. In May 23 they came close to 10 million. Let us say. So, there are questions of this kind that appear when one looks closely at these facts and then writes about them, and that is what a good writer has to do. Let us move on. For this table, here are some hints. You may begin with a sentence that says all about this table. In one sentence, you should be able to say all about this table. That will be the headline, the intro. That's not very easy, but not very difficult either. If you look at the entire table carefully, then some impression comes to your mind, and that impression it is that you have to share with your readers. After you have written that line, then you can say how this table has been created. Suppose someone doesn't, after all you are writing it for one who may not see the table, okay, though that is highly unlikely, but keep that in mind that there is somebody, some reader here who is not going to look at the table either because it is not going to be available to him or her, or because they do not like, or they don't always spend enough time on looking at the table. They would much rather read about it. Okay? So, because these people are not going to look at the table, it is your job to translate into words all that you consider significant. Okay? So, then you can say how this table has been created, what is there on the y axis, what is there on the x axis, what is there on the vertical column, what is there on the horizontal, or what is there in rows and in columns, okay? And how many rows, how many columns, you can say all that. Then the third point would be, what do these data pertain to? Okay? Say column, for instance, what do the different columns say? What do the different rows say? Okay? How does one row change from the other? And how does one column change from the other? So, going from top to bottom or bottom to top is your rows, and going from left to right is your columns. So, how does information change when you go from top to bottom or bottom to top, and when you move from left to right? Okay. So, these are the parameters also you have to mention. You can say that we are describing time of the year and the year, then we are describing the number of members in this union, then we are describing the total number of transactions between these members or among these members, and then finally we are saying the amount of money. We are going to talk about the amount of money involved. Okay. So, the third thing you say is what do these data pertain to, okay? How this table has been, the second point, how this table has been created, what does it say in different parts and in different ways. Then the third thing is what do these data pertain to, and for how many years, for which country. All of these things must also be given in the beginning. Then you can speak about things that the table indicates, but they are not mentioned there. You can also say the percentage growth in this and that, both vertical and horizontal. Why did number of banks rise but transactions did not, or why did transactions increase but the volume of money did not increase proportionately. Okay. So, all of these things can be said here. Okay. Then come to the fifth. Finally, you can also talk about how all this can change. Do you see any patterns? Do you want to make any predictions? Do you want something on the basis of, predictions on the basis of what you have seen? Predictions not like, astrologers going from your intuition or your general knowledge. No, going from this table. So, do you want to make any predictions? Do you want to say something about how this mode of payment can change the system of our money and banking, the way we buy, sell and save, the way we take and give and save our money, etc., all in brief. Finally, you have got them all. So, you must remember very carefully, and it is important that you look at the table with these questions in mind. If you look at the table without the questions, you will then get not even all of what you see there. Okay? You will just notice a few things, miss a few things. That is called giving it a glance. Giving it a look means almost taking a photograph of it in your memory, so that you remember what has been said where. So, take a good look. Actually, good is redundant with look. Look itself implies giving some time to what you are looking at. Okay? So, after you have looked at all this and looked at it all this with questions, then the answers will form in your head. So, as I said earlier in the earlier unit, in the first draft, don't worry about anything. Just don't worry, neither about grammar, nor spelling, nor punctuation, nor vocabulary, nor. All you have to do in the first hour is, in the first draft is to create contents. So, the rubric says that you should write about 150 words. Look at the instruction. Okay. It says right on top, in about 150 words, write a note on the facts and trends shown here. So, you have to write about 150 words, as I have said in the third bullet point from bottom. Okay. Or here for making to make it convenient to you, we have also created a report and given it in later slides. For the sake of comparison, to check whether your answers are correct, whether you left anything you should not have left, or whether you included something unnecessary, something more than you should have, check the model answer we have given in a later slide. Okay. We are calling them model not because they are the best or they cannot be bettered, but because they are the ones that can be followed. Actually, we may create some more model answers. Okay. Here we go. Look at the first sentence. The first sentence itself says all that is there about the table. The given table shows how rapidly popular digital payments facilitated by United Payments Interface have become in India. Okay. Here it is complete. But take your time to read it. Don't be in a hurry and find out whatever you think is unnecessary or ungrammatical or non-standard, so that you do not make those mistakes yourself. After you have done all that, you will find that God, rather than write 150 words, I ended up writing 343 words, almost twice as many. Now, you cannot submit that. Your outer limit is about 200. Okay. So, you have to finish this report within 200 words, and that also shows your command on the language, that you have a grip on the language, your proficiency is quite good. Okay. Only then what has been said in 343 words can be retold by you in under 200 words. It requires a grip on the language, an understanding of its words, its sentences, etc., etc. So, do it. Make another draft. This is the second draft. Okay. Now, it has only 241 words. We have easily in the second draft, you do not find leaps and bounds. You just say, though UPI began with 21 banks in 2016, there were no transactions in the first year. In the second year, the number of banks in it rose by over 100%, but it nowhere says leaps and bounds. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use any idiomatic expressions, any proverbs. Yes, if words permit and if it comes in a context, then that is all right. Even I have done it. I will show you some examples. But even now, at the end of the second draft, it is still 241 words. How can I further revise it? Do I cut down the content? Do I do away with some contents? Or are there ways of writing where we still can remove these at least 41 extra words and keep within the limit? There surely are. If you also look at it carefully and compare it with the earlier draft, you will find that yes, these 100 words have gone without us noticing it and without any problem. Look at this edited, I tracked it on the review software for you to be able to see it better. Okay. So, like this, you can look at it. Those words that are not crossed have been inserted by me, and those that have been crossed are redundant words from the piece of writing taken here. So, before we close, coming back to it, it may be a good idea for you to look at the graphs, charts, pie charts, diagrams that we have given in the resource book linked to this course. Do write those exercises and compare them with the model answers given there, and you will find that you can definitely become a better writer and better user of the English language. Thank you very much.